They chased a body no human was built to carry. Bigger, leaner, impossible. For a few golden years, the stage lights loved them, and the crowds roared their names. But behind the trophies was a hidden cost.
Doctors say the 23-year-old had an undiagnosed heart condition.
When these bodybuilding legends died, doctors uncovered shocking truths about what years of pushing the human body beyond its limits had done.
Guys that are taking drugs, hurting themselves, I see it in their organs. And not to mention, they shut off their own natural production of testosterone, and they feel horrible.
Today, we'll reveal the disturbing post-mortem findings of 15 bodybuilders whose deaths stunned the fitness world. Number 15, Rich Piana.
Bodybuilder Rich Piana collapsed, was in a medically induced coma, and then this morning we found out he passed away.
Before doctors ever examined Rich Piana's body, the warning signs had already begun to appear. Most people didn't notice them. To millions of fans, Rich was bodybuilding's biggest personality. He wasn't remembered for winning the most championships. He was remembered because he said what almost nobody else would. While others claimed their incredible physiques came from hard work alone, Rich openly admitted that building a body like his came with serious risks. That honesty made him different. Standing well over 280 pounds with enormous arms and an even bigger personality, Rich built an empire around fitness. His videos attracted millions of viewers, and his message was always the same. There are no magic shortcuts, and every decision has consequences. But behind the confidence, his body had been fighting a battle for years. In the weeks leading up to his final hospitalization, some longtime followers later noticed subtle changes. His breathing seemed heavier. His face looked more swollen than before. The signs were easy to overlook, but they suggested that his body was under tremendous strain. Then, in August 2017, everything changed. Rich suffered a medical emergency at his home and collapsed. Paramedics fought to revive him before rushing him to the hospital. Doctors managed to restart his heart, but the lack of oxygen had caused devastating damage. He was placed on life support, while his family hoped for a miracle. That miracle never came. After nearly 2 weeks in intensive care, his family made the heartbreaking decision to end life support. Rich Piana was only 46 years old. As doctors examined his body, they discovered the hidden cost of years spent pushing beyond normal human limits. His heart had become significantly enlarged, forcing it to work harder with every beat. His liver also showed extensive long-term damage, evidence of years of extraordinary physical stress. The body that had inspired millions on the outside had been struggling silently on the inside. Rich spent years telling people that every choice comes with a price. In the end, his own story became the strongest reminder of that truth. Sometimes the greatest damage isn't visible in the mirror. It's the damage that only doctors discover when it's already too late. Number 14, Andreas Munzer. When doctors examined Andreas Munzer after his death, one question echoed through the hospital. How had he stayed alive for this long? From the outside, Andreas looked like the definition of perfect health. On bodybuilding stages, judges and fans admired the razor-sharp detail of every muscle. His body carried almost no visible fat, and under the bright lights, every vein seemed to stand out. He became famous for a level of conditioning that few athletes have ever matched, but appearances can be deceiving. While the audience saw perfection, Andreas was asking his body to survive under conditions it was never designed for. Remaining in competition shape for months at a time meant constant physical stress. Recovery became rare, and every contest demanded that he become even leaner than before. Then came 1996. At a bodybuilding event in Germany, Andreas suddenly doubled over in pain. What first seemed like a medical emergency quickly turned into a race against time. He was rushed to the hospital. Doctors attempted to determine the cause of the severe internal bleeding. The operation revealed a body that had been under severe strain for years. His liver was badly damaged, bleeding in many places. His kidneys were not working properly anymore. His heart had enlarged far beyond normal, struggling to meet the demands placed on it. Years of dehydration and extreme preparation had pushed several vital organs beyond their limits. Despite emergency surgery and repeated efforts to stabilize him, Andreas could not be saved. He died at only 31 years of age. The autopsy confirmed what nobody had fully realized while he was competing. The body that had looked almost superhuman on stage had been paying a hidden price for years. Behind the trophies and applause was an athlete whose organs had been fighting a battle long before anyone noticed. Today, Andreas Münzer's legacy is remembered for two very different reasons. He set a new standard for conditioning in bodybuilding, but his story also became one of the sport's clearest warnings. Sometimes the greatest damage is the kind no one can see until it's too late. Number 13. Dallas McCarver. When Dallas McCarver died, many people believed they already knew what had happened. A young bodybuilder had tragically choked during a meal. It sounded like a heartbreaking accident, but once doctors began their examination, they realized the full story was far more complicated. Dallas was only 26 years old, yet he had already become one of bodybuilding's brightest prospects. Towering over 6 feet tall and weighing well over 300 pounds in the off-season, he earned the nickname Big Country. Fans saw him as the next superstar, a man with the size, genetics, and work ethic to one day reach the very top of the sport. To the outside world, he looked stronger than ever. Few realized what was happening beneath the surface. On August 22, 2017, Dallas was at home finishing one of the many meals required to maintain his enormous physique. During the meal, he suddenly began choking. Those with him tried desperately to help, while emergency responders rushed to the scene. Despite every effort, Dallas could not be revived. The official cause of death was listed as choking. But the autopsy revealed findings that changed how many people viewed his death. Doctors discovered that his heart was severely enlarged, weighing around 690 grams, nearly twice the weight of a typical adult heart. They also found significant narrowing in parts of his coronary arteries, making it much harder for his heart to do its job. His kidneys and liver showed signs of long-term damage as well, suggesting that several major organs had been under intense strain for years. Suddenly, the tragedy looked very different. What appeared to be a single fatal accident was also the story of a body that had been pushed to extraordinary limits. The muscles that impressed thousands had placed relentless demands on the organs responsible for keeping him alive. Dallas McCarver was only 26. He had a future that many believed would reshape professional bodybuilding. Instead, his story became one of the sport's most sobering reminders that strength on the outside doesn't always reflect health on the inside. Sometimes the biggest warning signs are invisible until doctors uncover them. Number 12. Nasser El Sanbati. Some bodybuilders are remembered for their size, others are remembered for their victories. Nasser El Sanbati was remembered for something far more unusual in his mind. Long before stepping onto the Mr. Olympia stage, Nasser had earned a reputation as one of the most intelligent men in bodybuilding. He spoke several languages, studied history and political science, and could spend hours discussing philosophy, science, or world affairs. Many people couldn't understand why someone with that level of intelligence had chosen such a demanding sport. But for Nasser, bodybuilding wasn't just a career. It became his life's mission. Throughout the 1990s, he built one of the most impressive physiques the sport had ever seen. Standing nearly 6 feet tall and weighing well over 300 pounds in the off-season, he combined extraordinary size with remarkable symmetry. In 1997, he came within touching distance of bodybuilding's biggest prize, finishing second at the Mr. Olympia, a result that many fans still debate to this day. On the outside, Nasser looked stronger than ever. Inside, a different story was unfolding. Years later, his kidneys began to fail. The damage became so severe that he depended on regular dialysis treatments just to survive. As his kidneys lost the ability to remove waste and excess fluid, the strain spread throughout his body, placing increasing pressure on his heart. Then, in March 2013, during a visit to Egypt, Nasser's long battle came to an end. He was only 47 years old. Medical findings revealed that both his heart and kidneys had suffered advanced failure. His body had been retaining fluid for a long time, forcing his heart to work far harder than it was ever meant to. The athlete, who once appeared almost unstoppable, had been fighting a battle that no audience could see. Perhaps that's what makes Nasser's story so unforgettable. He understood the human body better than most people ever will. He knew the science, the risks, and the consequences. Yet even knowledge couldn't protect him from years of extreme physical demands. Nasser El Sanbati didn't just leave behind one of bodybuilding's greatest physiques. He left behind one of its most powerful lessons, because sometimes the strongest body in the room is quietly fighting its weakest battle. Number 11. Mike Mentzer. Not every bodybuilding tragedy begins inside the body. Sometimes it begins inside the mind. Mike Mentzer wasn't like most bodybuilders. While others believed that more hours in the gym meant better results, Mike believed the opposite. He questioned everything. Instead of endless workouts, he promoted short, intense training sessions backed by logic and recovery. His heavy-duty training philosophy challenged almost every rule bodybuilding had accepted for years. Many thought he was wrong, until he proved them otherwise. In 1979, Mike delivered one of the greatest performances the sport had ever seen, earning a perfect score during the Mr. Olympia heavyweight competition. For a moment, it looked as though a new era of bodybuilding had arrived. But 1 year later, everything changed. The 1980 Mr. Olympia became one of the most controversial contests in bodybuilding history. Mike entered the competition expecting to fight for the title. Instead, the final results shocked both him and many fans. The outcome left him deeply disappointed, and not long afterward, he walked away from competitive bodybuilding. When Mike eventually returned to public life, people noticed he wasn't the same man. The confident athlete who once debated training philosophy had become increasingly private and withdrawn. Friends later described him as isolated, and his health continued to decline over the years. Then, in June 2000, Mike Mentzer died in his sleep at just 49 years old. The tragedy became even more heartbreaking when only 2 days later, his younger brother Ray Mentzer also passed away in the same house. Medical reports showed that Mike had been living with serious heart disease. His heart had enlarged, and his cardiovascular system had suffered significant long-term damage. The condition had been developing for years before his death. Mike Mentzer is remembered not only for changing the way people think about training, but also for reminding us that greatness can come with invisible struggles. He built one of bodybuilding's most influential philosophies, but in the end, the battle that mattered most wasn't fought under the barbell, it was fought within himself. Number 10. Dan Puckett. Not every bodybuilding tragedy begins with a collapsing heart. Some begin with a silent battle that nobody else can see. Dan Puckett wasn't a world champion. He wasn't a fitness celebrity. Most people had never heard his name. But after his death, his story became one of the most heartbreaking warnings in bodybuilding. He was only 22 years old. Dan was a college student with big dreams and an even bigger passion for bodybuilding. Friends remembered him as cheerful, respectful, and full of ambition. On the outside, he looked like a young man whose life was just getting started. But behind the smile, something was changing. In the weeks leading up to his death, those closest to him noticed that he had become unusually quiet. The energetic young athlete was slowly withdrawing from family and friends. They believed it was the pressure of school or everyday life. No one realized he was fighting a battle that couldn't be seen. Then, on February 11, 2007, everything came to a tragic end. Dan died at just 22 years old. When doctors examined his body, they expected to find the same kind of damage seen in many bodybuilding deaths. Instead, they found something very different. His heart showed no major enlargement. His liver wasn't severely damaged. His kidneys were functioning normally. Physically, there was little evidence of the organ failure that had claimed the lives of so many other athletes. That discovery shifted attention to another danger often discussed in bodybuilding: the psychological effects that can accompany major hormonal changes, including those that may occur after discontinuing anabolic steroids. Experts have warned that these changes can contribute to severe depression and emotional distress in some individuals. Though every case is different, and mental health is influenced by many factors, Dan's story became a reminder that not every bodybuilding tragedy is written inside the heart, the liver, or the kidneys. Sometimes, the deepest wounds leave no visible scars, and by the time anyone realizes they're there, it's already too late. Number 9. Daniel Alexander. Every bodybuilding career begins with one dream: to earn a place among the sport's elite. Daniel Alexander was getting closer than ever. After winning major amateur titles and earning his IFBB Pro card, he had become one of the sport's most promising young athletes. He was blessed with a balanced physique, indefatigable work ethic, and confidence on stage, and plenty thought he had his best days ahead. But fate had other plans. In 2019, Daniel was preparing for another professional competition. Like every serious bodybuilder in contest prep, he was pushing his body through one of the toughest phases of the sport. Long training sessions, strict dieting, and the physical demands of getting stage ready had become part of his daily routine. Then, without warning, everything came to an end. Daniel Alexander passed away before he could step on stage again. He was still under 30 years old. As news of his death spread, the bodybuilding community searched for answers. But unlike many of the athletes on this list, no detailed autopsy findings or official medical explanation were ever made public. His family chose to keep those details private, leaving many questions unanswered. That mystery has remained ever since. Whether the cause was related to an underlying medical condition, the physical demands of contest preparation, or something entirely different has never been officially confirmed. That's what makes Daniel's story so unsettling. Sometimes the most eerie cases aren't those in which medical professionals make startling revelations. They're the ones where the answers never come at all. Daniel Alexander is remembered not only for the promise he showed on stage, but for the career and the life that ended before the world had the chance to see his full potential. Number 8. Bret Michaels. Not every bodybuilding tragedy begins inside the gym. Sometimes the real danger is something a person has carried their entire life without fully realizing it. Bret Michaels looked like the definition of perfect health. He developed a lucrative career as an entertainer and fitness model due to his remarkable appearance and impressive physique. He attracted the interest of elite photographers at the age of just 22, creating opportunities that many athletes could only imagine. From the outside, his future looked incredibly bright, but behind the cameras and magazine covers, his body was sending quiet warning signs. In the weeks before his death, Bret reportedly complained of an irregular heartbeat. At first, it seemed a minor problem, but it was a sign of something much more serious going on inside his chest. Then, on February 25, 2007, the 29-year-old was discovered dead in his sleep. But when doctors examined his body, they found something that a lot of people never knew he had. Bret had been living with a congenital heart disorder, something he had been born with. But they also found that years of heavy alcohol use and performance-enhancing drugs had placed even greater strain on a heart that was already vulnerable. Together, those factors created a burden his body could no longer overcome. His story serves as a powerful reminder that not every athlete begins the race with the same advantages. Sometimes, hidden medical conditions remain silent for years, only revealing themselves when the body is pushed beyond its limits. Bret Michaels built a career around physical perfection, but when doctors looked inside, they discovered that the greatest weakness had been hidden in his heart all along. And by the time anyone realized how serious it was already too late. Number 7. Greg Kovach. Some bodybuilders spent their careers chasing trophies. Greg Kovach chased something no trophy could measure. He wanted to become the biggest bodybuilder the world had ever seen, and for a while he did. Standing well over 6 feet tall and weighing more than 400 pounds in the off-season, Greg didn't look like an ordinary athlete. Even among professional bodybuilders, he stood apart. Wherever he went, people stopped, stared, and wondered how a human body could possibly become that massive. His size became his identity. The bigger he grew, the more people talked about him. But every extra pound came with a cost. As the years passed, simple tasks became more difficult. Walking left him breathless. His legs and feet often swelled. Chest pain became increasingly common. Doctors warned him that his heart was carrying a burden it was never designed to handle. They urged him to reduce his body weight before permanent damage was done. But walking away from that goal meant walking away from the image he had spent years creating. So Greg kept pushing forward. Then, in November 2013, his body reached its limit. Greg suffered a massive heart attack at his home. Although he was rushed to the hospital, the damage to his heart was too severe. A few days later, he passed away at just 44 years old. When doctors examined his condition, they discovered the true price of becoming the biggest. His heart had enlarged dramatically after years of pumping blood through an extraordinary amount of muscle and body mass. It had been working under relentless strain for so long that it could no longer keep up. Greg Kovach achieved the one goal he had dedicated his life to. He became one of the biggest bodybuilders the world had ever seen. But in the end, the organ that mattered most could never grow strong enough to carry the weight of that dream. Sometimes the hardest weight to lift is the one your heart is forced to carry every single day. Number 6. Ziz Aziz Shavershian. He never won a Mr. Olympia title. He never competed on the biggest bodybuilding stages. Yet millions still consider Ziz one of the most influential figures in fitness history. Born in Australia, Aziz Shavershian was once a skinny teenager who struggled with confidence and was often bullied for his appearance. Instead of accepting it, he walked into a gym determined to change his life. And he did. Within a few years, his remarkable metamorphosis, captivating personality, and unwavering self-assurance made him an internet sensation. However, people were more impressed by his mindset than his physical appearance. With his well-known statement, "We're all gonna make it," Ziz encouraged millions of young men to pursue self-improvement and have faith in themselves. Then something tragic happened. On August 5, 2011, while vacationing in Thailand with his brother, Ziz entered a sauna to relax. Minutes later, he was found unconscious. Despite desperate efforts by paramedics, he couldn't be revived. He was just 22 years old. When Ziz's body was autopsied, it was found that his heart was severely enlarged, a condition that significantly increases the risk of sudden cardiac death. He also openly admitted to using anabolic steroids, which are known to place additional stress on the cardiovascular system. The sauna's extreme heat, coupled with the underlying heart condition, posed a catastrophic risk. The story of Ziz is much more than the loss of a fitness icon. It's a reminder that the strongest-looking body doesn't always mean the healthiest heart. His life ended far too soon, but his message still echoes through gyms around the world. We're all gonna make it. Number 5. Boston Lloyd. Boston Lloyd built a reputation by doing what almost no one in bodybuilding dared to do: tell the truth. Where most athletes kept their performance-enhancing drug under wraps, he bragged openly about his steroid cycles, injections, and risks. He was also one of the sport's most controversial figures for being so honest. But on February 25, 2022, that journey ended tragically. Boston suddenly collapsed at his home and was rushed to the hospital. Despite every effort to save him, he died at just 29 years old. Then doctors uncovered what had been happening inside his body. The cause of death was an aortic dissection, a catastrophic tear in the body's largest artery. It's one of the deadliest medical emergencies, often leaving victims with only minutes to live. But there was another disturbing discovery. Years ago, Boston had developed stage 5 kidney disease after suffering major kidney damage, which put his body under constant strain. Those close to him also revealed that his father had experienced an aortic aneurysm, suggesting a possible inherited weakness in his cardiovascular system. When doctors looked at the full picture, it wasn't just one medical problem. It was a body carrying the burden of genetic risk, failing kidneys, and years of extreme chemical enhancement. Together, those factors created a perfect storm, one that ultimately claimed the life of a bodybuilder who spent years exposing the sport's darkest secrets. Number 4. Franco Columbu. When doctors examined Franco Columbu after his death, one question stood out above all the others. How could this happen to someone who had done almost everything right? Unlike many bodybuilders of his era, Franco was never known for chasing dangerous extremes. Standing just 5 feet 5 inches tall, he wasn't the biggest man on stage, but he was undoubtedly one of the strongest. He won 2 Mr. Olympia titles, competed at the highest levels of strength sports, and had a reputation for packing incredible power into a relatively small frame. But Franco's greatest strength was not merely physical. He believed in knowing the body as well as training it. He became a licensed chiropractor and stayed active into his 70s. He was widely respected for his disciplined approach to health and fitness. Many people believed he would enjoy a long and healthy life. Then in August 2019, tragedy struck. While swimming near the coast of Sardinia during a visit to Italy, Franco suffered a medical emergency. Despite rescue efforts, he could not be saved. He was 78 years old. As doctors reviewed his condition, they found advanced cardiovascular disease, including significant coronary artery disease. The damage had developed gradually over many years, remaining largely silent until it became life-threatening. The findings shocked many people, not because Franco had ignored his health, but because he had spent a lifetime taking care of it. His story reminds us that heart disease doesn't always come with obvious warning signs. Sometimes it creeps up over decades in silence, only to announce itself in a single tragic moment. Franco Columbu devoted his life to building strength, but doctors ultimately learned that amazing strength can't always save the heart. Maybe that's why his story is still one of bodybuilding's most sobering reminders. Some tragedies don't start with bad decisions. Sometimes it is a condition that flies under the radar until it's far too late. Number 3. Mohammed Benaziza. Some victories demand incredible sacrifice, others demand everything. Mohammed Benaziza knew what it meant to fight against impossible odds. Growing up in Algeria, he didn't have the advantages that many of his rivals enjoyed. There were no elite coaches guiding him, no major sponsors funding his journey, and no state-of-the-art gyms waiting for him. Yet none of that stopped him from dreaming of bodybuilding's biggest stages. He relied on something far more powerful than discipline. Every workout was treated like a mission. Every setback became motivation. While others had better resources, Benaziza earned his place through relentless determination. Before long, the bodybuilding world began to notice the quiet competitor from Algeria, whose conditioning looked almost unreal. By 1990, He had earned his IFBB Pro card and was standing shoulder to shoulder with the best bodybuilders on the planet. He wasn't the largest man on stage, but when it came to muscle definition, very few could match him. His physique looked carved from stone with every muscle separated in astonishing detail. Then came the competition that would change everything. In October 1992, Benaziza traveled to the Netherlands for the Grand Prix Holland. He wanted to arrive in the best condition of his career, so he followed the contest preparation methods that were widely accepted in professional bodybuilding at the time. Days before stepping on stage, he severely restricted his water intake and used diuretics to remove as much water from his body as possible. The goal was to achieve that razor-sharp, paper-thin look judges rewarded, and on stage it worked. Benaziza looked spectacular. He displayed one of the most impressive physiques of the competition, and once again proved why he was considered one of the most conditioned athletes in the sport. But only minutes later, the celebration turned into panic. Backstage, he suddenly collapsed. Witnesses watched in horror as his body began convulsing. Foam appeared around his mouth while fellow competitors desperately called for medical help. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, but by then his body was already shutting down. His heartbeat had become dangerously irregular, and one organ after another was beginning to fail. Doctors fought to save him. They couldn't. On the evening of October 4th, 1992, Mohamed Benaziza was pronounced dead. He was only 33 years old. The autopsy revealed a devastating truth. Severe dehydration combined with a life-threatening electrolyte imbalance had caused cardiovascular collapse. In his attempt to achieve the perfect contest physique, his body had lost so much fluid and essential minerals that his heart could no longer function normally. Perhaps the most heartbreaking part is that Benaziza hadn't experimented with some secret or reckless method. He had simply followed a contest preparation routine that many professional bodybuilders considered normal at the time. His death sent shockwaves throughout the bodybuilding world and became one of the earliest warnings about the deadly risks of extreme dehydration and diuretic abuse. Mohamed Benaziza spent years proving that determination could overcome any obstacle. In the end, the greatest obstacle wasn't standing beside him on stage. It was the price his own body paid in the pursuit of perfection. Number 2. Robert Benvenente. Success had finally arrived. After years of hard training and competing through the amateur ranks, Robert Benvenete earned one of the biggest victories of his career by winning the Southern States Championship in 2003. It was the breakthrough he had worked toward for nearly a decade, and many believed it was only the beginning of something even greater. He had the physique, he had the determination, and he had a future that looked incredibly promising. But sometimes, the greatest battle isn't the one taking place on stage. It's the one happening inside the body. Just 1 year after his biggest victory, tragedy struck. In 2004, Robert Benvenete suffered a massive heart attack. He was only 30 years old. The bodybuilding world was shocked by the news given how young and fit he was. It was difficult for many to comprehend how an athlete who seemed to be in the prime of life could be claimed so suddenly. Not many details of his medical condition were ever released, but his death was another heartbreak that showed physical strength on the outside doesn't always reflect what's going on inside the body. For years, doctors have warned that extreme physical exertion, especially if you already have cardiovascular disease or other health problems, can create tremendous stress on the heart. Serious heart problems in athletes may go undetected until a sudden, life-threatening event occurs. Robert died just as his career was taking off. He got the success he'd been pursuing for years, but he never got to discover how far his talent could have taken him. His story reminds us that sometimes the most dangerous weakness is not visible on the outside. It's the one silently growing inside the heart. Number 1. Luke Sando. Sometimes, the most devastating discoveries aren't made on the bodybuilding stage, they're made on the autopsy table, and Luke Sando's story is perhaps the clearest example of that. Just weeks before his death, the respected British bodybuilder stepped onto the stage at the Arnold Classic Australia, determined to bring his best physique yet. To achieve that razor-sharp, contest-ready look, he followed an aggressive diuretic protocol, but his body was already reaching its limit. Backstage, Luke reportedly vomited multiple times. On stage, he struggled to breathe and could barely hold his poses. After the competition, doctors discovered he was suffering from severe dehydration, dangerously high potassium levels, and kidneys that were close to shutting down. Luke later admitted that if he hadn't gone to the hospital, he likely wouldn't have survived. But that medical emergency was only a warning. In May 2020, at just 32 years old, Luke Sando passed away. When doctors examined his body, they found a severely enlarged heart with left ventricular hypertrophy and acute heart failure. The findings showed that years of pushing his body to its absolute limits had placed tremendous strain on his cardiovascular system. His family later revealed they never realized the full extent of the performance-enhancing drugs he had been using. Luke Sando didn't lose his life because of a single competition. The damage had been building silently for years, and in the end, the autopsy revealed the devastating price of chasing perfection. And that's the end of today's video. These were the heartbreaking stories of 10 bodybuilders and the shocking medical findings that revealed what was happening inside their bodies after death. Thanks for watching, and if you found this video informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.